Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's so nice to see so many names popping in the attendee list. Look at this, already so quickly, well over a dozen people joining us. We're going to give it just a minute or two before we get it kicked off. We know people are just rounding out their days to join us this evening. So we're going to just hang out for a minute or two and let people get introduced into the room. Wow, nearly 30 people already in the first minute. This is amazing. Lisa, I know we've been chatting and you've been looking forward to this community conversation. Isn't it so cool seeing all these names pop into the attendee list?
Fantastic. Yeah.
Great. And again, for those folks that are just jumping in, thank you so much for joining us at 5 p.m. We're going to give it just another minute or two to let people get into the Zoom room before we get it kicked off with Lisa. All right. Wow, dozens and dozens of folks joining. We'll just one last minute and we're going to get this show kicked off. I know I'm so excited to be listening to this discussion. We are going to have ample time at the end for your questions as well. All right. Well, it is about 5:03. So we're going to go ahead and get this community conversation kicked off. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bobby Mann. I'm the Chief Programs Officer for St. Hubert's Animal Welfare Center and Humane Rescue Alliance. I'm so honored and so excited to be joining all of you today as our CEO and President, Lisa LaFontaine, is going to walk you through our 2023 highlights. But before I hand it over to Lisa, one, we're going to be sharing a lot of highlights, but even more importantly, we want to hear the questions that you have for us today. And so I'm going to give you a quick run of show on how you're going to be able to prompt your questions for us to answer at the end of the presentation. So if you're new to Zoom, I'm going to ask you to take your mouse and hover over your Zoom screen. As you do that, you're going to see some boxes pop up at the bottom of your screen, one of which says Q&A, and that's going to be questions and answers. So if you select that box and open it, there is going to be a place for you to prompt your questions. So if you type them into the Q&A section, that's going to send them over to us, and we will gladly answer those questions at the end of the call. So again, I am so looking forward to this and so grateful that dozens and dozens of you joined us today. So without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to our president and CEO, Lisa LaFontaine.
Thanks, Bobby. And hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here tonight. Would you go back just a minute? I just want to highlight uh, right there. Um, so first of all, I want to thank you all because without you, we couldn't do the work. We wouldn't have the impact that I'm about to share with you. And last year was a really interesting year. There were a lot of challenges, but I would say that our team rose to meet all of those challenges and more, but we couldn't have done it without your support. So thank you for being here. And I'm going to start really big and talk about just the general animal welfare world. And then I'm going to narrow in on what's been happening in New Jersey and what's been happening for St. Hubert's. And I do hope that you'll jot down any questions you have because in lieu of being together in a room, I really like to have the give and take, and I really want you to know what's on my mind, but most importantly, I want to know what's on your mind. And so with this slide here, I just want to share with you that one of the things I do a lot is foster animals. I know many of you foster as well, and over the years I've stopped counting, but it's in the hundreds now, and I never know when I'm going to get a call from the team. They tend to know exactly those situations where they can call me. And one very hot day this summer, we had a lot of cases of canine influenza. You might have heard about that. And we had a mother dog and her puppies who needed to come into the shelter the day after we had the first positive case. And we were trying to keep all dogs out of the shelter, but especially mothers with puppies. And so this is Molly, and she came right from the van into my home with her three babies. We had her for a week or so. And then her babies went on to find permanent homes. And Molly got adopted by our director of learning and development, Lawrence Minnis. So I get to see her all the time. But to me, fostering saves lives. And I know that many of you do this for us. So I just wanted to share with you that how I know how heartwarming it is. I know how challenging it is to let them go. Um, so thanks to all of you who have fostered. It's been a big part of how we got through the challenges last year. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about animal sheltering at the national level. And I'm sure that any of you who've read articles about animal shelters have seen a recurring theme, which is that American animal shelters were completely overrun, mostly with large dogs in the last year. And the press and the media have spun a narrative that these are dogs that were adopted during the pandemic and then returned. And that's actually not the case. At St. Hubert's and at shelters across the country, we're not seeing those pandemic adoptions return. But what we are seeing is that big dogs come into our shelters and they stay there longer. They sit and they sit. And by that, I mean dogs over 50 pounds. And there are a few reasons for that. I think one of them is that pandemic adoption flurry, because I think between March 2020 and June 2020, more people did adopt during that quarter than any time before or since. And so I think that a lot of people who maybe thought they were going to adopt in a year or so came and got an animal at the beginning of the pandemic because they knew that we were trying to empty our shelters and they knew that they were going to be stuck at home and wanted to shelter in place with a friend. So it was great to see all those adoptions, but it really disrupted the rhythm of people adopting. And so I think that we're going to be a little bit out of balance for a couple of years until that rhythm right sizes a little bit. I think the other thing that happened during the pandemic that is a bigger concern to me is that we're seeing evidence of a lot of internet-based rescues that set up their websites and all of their social media presence to look like a rescue, but they're really puppy stores. They're really selling dogs. And this deeply concerns me for a lot of reasons. One is that I think there are a lot of people who think they're rescuing, and they're really not. They're feeding into irresponsible breeding and puppy mills. But I think that the second thing that concerns me about it is that there's not a lot of counseling that's done. People turn to these internet adoptions because they're easy and they're convenient, and we learn to do so many things on the internet during the pandemic. But what doesn't happen in those transactions is there's not a lot of, and I call them transactions intentionally, there's not a lot of counseling. There's not a lot of matchmaking. There's not a lot of offering what to do in the first days. And we all know that anytime you bring an animal into a home, it's going to be a little bit disruptive at the beginning. And so the other thing that happens with this internet-based adoption and acquisition is that there aren't the wraparound services that St. Hubert's provides. I mean, we're a full campus, both in person and virtually. We offer training classes. We have a pet supply store. We have doggy daycare. We have people that you can call to ask questions. We do spay and neuter. We do so many things, and those wraparound services are just as important as the adoption. And so one of the things I worry about is that for people that got these dogs online during these last couple of years, there's no phone number to call. There are no people to reach out to. So I think we're also going to start seeing a lot of those animals bounce back into shelters in the coming years. So I just wanted to kind of set the record straight, because the press keeps telling the story of pandemic returns, and that is not the story. And I just like all of our stakeholders to really know the things that we're thinking about. And I mean, St. Hubert's, because we have such great wraparound programs, because we have such a strong community of support, We've actually seen a slight increase in adoptions, about 5% more adoptions in 2023, but we are very much the exception to the rule. The colleagues that we have, the other shelters in the state, they're not seeing that kind of adoption increase. And it's, it's really heart-wrenching. And so we're thinking about, what do we do? What do we do in the face of this challenge? And so one thing we're looking at is, how do we expand our pet support services? More and more people have pets, but with any kind of economic disruption to the household, they're challenged not only to care for themselves, but to care for their animals. And so you'll see a little bit more later into the presentation that we've really stepped up our efforts to give out free pet food and to give out spay-neuter vouchers and to be there for people when they have questions about their pet. I think we also have to think differently about how we shelter animals. One thing we've done at St. Hubert's this year is really invest in our foster program. And so we have a lot of animals who are living in foster homes right now instead of at the St. Hubert's facility. And we still support those animals. Our medical team cares for them. Our behavior team supports them, but they're sheltered in people's homes. And many times those people who are fostering the animals actually find friends and relatives and people who are in their network to adopt the animals. So that's wonderful. And we really are challenging ourselves to see how many animals can we shelter in foster homes, because that isn't just good for the animal, but it builds community, and building community is something that we really prioritize. And then finally, we have been trying to reinvent our approach to matchmaking and adoption. So if some of these online rescue and puppy selling groups are making it convenient, we're trying to make it fun. We're trying to make it engaging. So next slide. I think one of the things that we did this year is we really tried to pay attention to trends. So Barbie Mania hit this summer, and St. Hubert's jumped on that by doing a special Barbie promotion. And you can just see that we mimicked the marketing of the Barbie movie, and that just captures people's attention. It makes them think a little bit differently. Last week, People magazine actually featured St. Hubert's long stay dogs in a Valentine's Day promotion. We honored Taylor with a special marketing campaign, and then we glamorized some of our small pets just to help them stand out a lot, because they get overlooked. And I think just making it fun, making it accessible, saying that it's enjoyable to engage with us, that you shouldn't be afraid to come to us, is a way that we try to create a more welcoming presence for people. Next slide. So as more and more people are using technology, as more and more people are using social media, we're really trying to step our technology game up significantly. And if you think about it, animals are a gift to social media, and we have the content that everybody wants. Everybody is posting animal videos and animal stories. And so we're really trying to get ahead of the curve there, and to create storytelling in a virtual form so people can almost feel like they're with us. And investing in technology, we've gotten a couple of grants, and we have a couple of donors who have sponsored us really increasing our capacity to market and engage. And so you're going to see more of that from us in the coming months and years. Next. So sending animals home, that is really what we are here for. And a lot of people say, I couldn't do what you do, but I think you could do what I do if you really focus on what it's like to take animals who've come from some of the most challenging, devastating circumstances and essentially turn their lives around for them. And so here are just a couple of the animals that we went well above and beyond for this year. So poor little Elsa came from a shelter in Louisiana. And as you could see, she had a terrible, terrible case of mange, not Demodex, which is really uncomfortable. It's really itchy. And we made sure she got on the transport because we knew that we could provide her the medical care that would turn her life around. And so Elsa came to us. She got medical treatment. She slowly began to heal. She became the beautiful dog that she was always supposed to be. And you can just see in the before and after that we turned things around for her. We made her comfortable. We made her beautiful. We made her happy. And all she needed was a little bit of TLC, um, to be in a position to go into a permanent home. And so she is now living the life where she is loved and cuddled and she's comfortable and happy. And that's why we're here. We're here to create those happy endings for animals and for people. And Bolt was uh, a real challenge for us. She came with a severe injury to her face. And as you could see, her upper teeth were exposed. She was painful to the touch. She couldn't function really as a dog. She couldn't hold a ball. She couldn't eat well. Um, she couldn't play in a normal way. And we reached out to you, our amazing donors, and within no time at all, we had the funding in place so that we could send her to a specialist. And she went through, as you can see, a series of reconstructive surgeries. Uh, and it took a while and it was expensive, but she was worth it. And you can just see in her eyes that she's a kind and loving dog who just wanted a chance to be a normal dog. And now look at her. She's not only does she have a boat, but she has a family. She's living the life. She can do all of the things that normal dogs can do. It's really miraculous what we can do when we reach out to the community and the community responds. And we are so thankful that you were there for us, but most importantly for Bolt. And so these are just two of the 3,756 animals that we sent home last year into loving homes through our adoption and transport programs. Next. So our way station, many of you know about our way station. And if you don't, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's a wonderful program. And there's a great imbalance in shelters throughout the country in terms of how many resources do they have? How many staff do they have? What kind of facilities do they have? Do the communities know about them? Do the communities send them money? Do people volunteer? And we have colleagues in places like Texas and Louisiana and throughout the Southeast who sometimes are caring for thousands of animals with just 3 dozen staff members, and they don't have a medical team and they don't have medical supplies. They don't really have adopters or volunteers. And the outlook for animals is bleak in those communities. And it's not bleak because of our colleagues. They are just as passionate about animal welfare as all of us at St. Hubert's. They want to get up and have these happy endings just like we do, but they don't have the same privileges and the same support that we do. And so one way that we try to bridge that gap is through our way station transport program, where we regularly take animals who are in those communities where they don't have a lot of options, and we transfer them to St. Hubert's, where they can get a second chance at a new life. And in some cases, we keep the animals at St. Hubert's and we find them adoptive homes in our own community. In other cases, we send them to destination shelters, usually in the Northeast, where they have capacity to care for them. But there's been a great stressor on the transport program in the last 18 months or so, because those northern shelters that we used to rely upon to take way station animals regularly by the thousands have also seen this large dog capacity challenge that I talked about. So we've had more and more of those shelters that just haven't had space and they've had to cancel the transports. But we wanted to dig deep because we have long-term relationships with our source shelters, sometimes 8 years or more. And we didn't want to let them down and we didn't want to put them in a bind. So what we did is we made a commitment to keep taking animals, but to work harder to adopt them out in our own community. And so in 2023, we transported 3,146 animals, which was an incredible, it was over 40, but we kept 41% more in St. Hubert's than we had in the past. So this slide isn't exactly right. The transport number was 3,146, but we kept many more of the animals in our own community and adopted them out. And then one of the most beautiful things about this way station program is that there are what we call give back funds. And that's where we take a portion of the adoption fee or the adoption donation, and we give it back to the source shelter, usually for spay neuter, so that they can try to get out of the situation that they're in. And so in 2023 alone, we gave $70,000 in funding to our source shelter partners for them to invest in stopping overpopulation in their communities so that every year they can hopefully be in a better place. And maybe someday they can transport animals in instead of transporting them out. And we, as you can see from Chief and Sammy, we transport dogs, but we also have what we call our feline pipeline, where we transport in cats. And while our dogs tend to come from shelters in the Southeast, from Texas to Puerto Rico, our cats often come from New Jersey shelters, where they have way too many cats and not enough adopters. And so we're really excited to help out in our own home state as well. Next slide. So last year was a great year for advocacy in New Jersey. And there is a really strong coalition of people who care about animals and who understand that the backbone of animal sheltering is strong laws and regulations that protect animals. And I know many of you on the call were a part of these legislative victories, but these are both a very big deal. The first is that we finally passed cost of care legislation. And the way that that works is that when animals are seized in cruelty cases, they go into a type of temporary protective custody where they stay in shelters for the duration of the legal case against their abusers. And this creates incredible stresses on shelters because almost all of these animals have serious medical conditions or their health is compromised in some way. And it's really, really expensive to shelter them and to care for them for the long term. And so what this cost of care legislation has done is bring New Jersey in line with some of the more progressive states where the person who was abusing the animal actually has to pay upfront month by month for the care of that animal for the duration of the trial. So it eases the financial burden on shelters who are doing this life-saving temporary protective custody, and it makes it easier for them to give these animals both the medical care, but also the behavior care and just the daily feeding that they need. And then after over a decade of advocacy that was broad and widespread, we finally passed legislation to end the humane confinement of mother pigs and baby cows in gestation crates and veal crates. And these are incredibly inhumane types of housing that are tantamount to a form of torture. And we're just so proud that New Jersey has joined the ranks of the states that outlaw this kind of inhumane housing of farm animals. So these two pieces of legislation really propelled New Jersey to the forefront. And we're always focused on what more can we do? And so our next legislative priority is to make it easier for people to care for outdoor cats, because there are so many outdoor cats throughout the state who are suffering. And the reason they're suffering is because there are bans on how they get cared for, whether they get released. And we want to again, bring New Jersey in line with some of the most progressive states and make it easier to care for and sterilize and vaccinate and then release these cats into the environments where they are living. Next slide. So I just want to hit upon a few of our highlights, and we have an amazing team of people who go above and beyond. During the recent snowstorm, our team slept at the shelter to take care of the animals and make sure they were there to man the phones. And they dig deep every day and they go beyond every day. I'm so proud of this team, and I hope you are too. And I want to share some of the successes that we achieved together. So last year, our very small and mighty medical team performed 2,160 surgeries. Many of those were spay neuter, but we also did a lot of dental care, which is a pretty intensive intervention for pets. And it really increases the quality of life for animal when they have healthy teeth. But we also did specialized surgeries to remove lumps or operate on injured limbs or broken bones. And we're really lucky to have a team that has this type of this ability. Not a lot of shelters have teams like this. Our save rate was incredible. We saved the lives of 97% of the animals who came through our doors last year. And as you can see with Karen, the top picture that shows Karen and some of our campers, we touched the lives of 1,640 kids through our humane education program. And these camps are fun and they're educational and they're informational, and they turn kids into ambassadors for animals. At the same time, the kids are having a lot of fun, and they do things like make toys for our pets. And so they actually contribute to the welfare of and the care of the animals. And I've been out in stores at night with my St. Hubert's logo on and had people tell me, my parents went to your humane ed camp and now my children are going. So we're very proud of this program. Our behavior team is also just amazing, just the skill that they have. They've been together for a long time. Many of you have been a part of these training classes. But what you might not know is that we do training for the shelter animals as well. And while we have a beautiful facility at St. Hubert's and we get the dogs out a lot and we have a lot of volunteers who take them on walks, it's one of the best things we can do is give them normal interaction time with other dogs. And so last year we did nearly 200 playgroup sessions, which is where a group of dogs will come together in one of our outdoor yards, and they'll just play and they'll wrestle and they'll have a chance to be dogs. And so 1,500 dogs went through playgroups in the last year alone. Next slide. So we have the most amazing dedicated volunteers, some of whom have been with us for decades. We have volunteers who come out for every transport and who are there to welcome the first dog off the plane and are they're all the way through. They ride back to the shelter with us. They take the dogs out, they give them a hug, they settle them in. I don't know if Connie and Patty Millen are here, Connie Olson and Patty Millen, but they are there at virtually every transport, and they're the first loving faces and loving arms that these animals come into and the animals see, and they stay around to give them their first meal in New Jersey. And it's a team that has fun, but they also are doing really serious work. And every single thing we do at St. Hubert's is supported by volunteers. Altogether, volunteers contributed well over 16,000 hours of time, which is, if you think about the value of people's time, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it extends our reach, it extends our impact. And I don't know if people know this, but I actually started as a volunteer at my local shelter. I went in, I just wanted to walk dogs and foster cats. And slowly I got more and more involved until I worked for the shelter. But I really know what these volunteers give, and I appreciate it every minute of the day. I talked a little bit about how we're seeking to grow our foster program and to actually be able to care for more animals because we have more foster homes. And so our foster program has grown exponentially in the last 2 years. And in 2023, we had 630 foster families who took care of 960 of the animals who came into the shelter. So, I mean, that's nearly 1,000 animals who we were able to take care of because incredibly generous people opened their homes and their hearts and oftentimes found homes for these animals as well. We also have a wonderful field trip program where dogs get out of the shelter with volunteers and sometimes staff members to get out in the community and to walk around and to see the community life, to see new people, most importantly, to have people see how wonderful our animals are. And so 400 dogs went on field trips this year, and we hope to expand that in 2024. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier that we are seeing more and more people who need to give up their pets, not because they want to, but because they have to, because something has happened in their life to make life harder. It may be um, loss of a job. It may be loss of a home. It may be a family breaking up. It may be domestic violence. It may be retirement and people moving on to a fixed income makes it harder to get the supplies and support for their animals. So we're really asking ourselves, how do we help more animals by keeping them in the homes where they're already loved? And our pet pantry is one of the real gateway programs to doing that. We get a lot of donations because we are known for our transport program by animal welfare funders and the animal welfare industry, the pet industry. So because of the transport program, people know St. Hubert's, they know the good work we do. And we get a lot of donations of pet food from our animal welfare funders. This year, we got nearly 230,000 pounds of food, and we gave it out in New Jersey to people who were struggling for the next meal for their pet at our pet pantries. This makes the difference between an animal sleeping in his own bed with his loving family and an animal needing to be sleeping in a shelter and a family having broken up. So we want to do everything we can to keep families together. And pet food is one way we do this. We work with nearly 120 community partners and human services organizations. So we'll set up a table at the events that they have to help people. And we're there to give out food for the pets. We're there to answer questions, to connect them to resources, and to help them in any way we can. I think the next frontier of this type of pet support is going to be veterinary care. And I'll talk a little bit about that toward the end. And then 30 animals received temporary care through our Safe Haven program. And Safe Haven is the helping phone line for people who are often trying to get out of domestic violence relationships. And they have to find a new home and they have to find it quickly, but having a pet hampers their ability to find housing for themselves. And so their choices are to leave the pet with a partner who's being violent and know that that pet is probably going to get the brunt of that anger, or to stay in a relationship that is unsafe, or to give their pet up. All three are bad options. And so this year we sheltered 29 animals in long-term care through our Safe Haven program, which gives domestic violence survivors the time that they need and the space and the breathing room they need to find dependable housing so that they can get their pet back. And so that means that nearly 30 animals who would have been given up by people who are already vulnerable, who need those pets more than anything, they were able to go back to their families. And this is a real life affirming program because for a domestic violence survivor, getting out is taking back power. Finding a home is exercising self-care and power. And then keeping your animal and having that animal to care for is really important for people's identity and sense of self-worth. So we're really proud of this program. And we're really thankful that you give us money and support to allow us to do this. Next slide. So one of the really exciting things that happened this year is that we opened our North Branch Doggy Day Camp. For any of you who come to our Madison campus, you know about our Doggy Day Camp, which is the building that you see when you first turn into our parking lot. And at one time last year, we had a very long waiting list, and it caused us to think about, are there other communities where we should be providing daycare? Is this a key way of helping families to know that their pet has a safe place to go and not have to think about giving them up? And so we finally decided that we were going to open our North Branch facility into not just a doggy day camp, but a camp where they can get full service. At our North Branch Center, dogs are going to be able to get grooming. They're going to have training classes with our amazing behaviorists, and it's a beautiful facility. If you're looking for daycare for your pet, I strongly urge you. We have a few slots left. I strongly urge you to get in here because it's one of the best daycare experiences you could possibly have. If you know anybody who's looking for daycare, this is a place where you can drop your dog off. They're going to be loved. Our professionals are there to look out for them. There are exercise yards. They're going to have a chance to learn new skills through training. So it really is the best of the best. So I would just ask you, it's my one ask of you tonight is spread the word about our doggy day camp because we're really excited to see it open up. We just opened our doors in January and we can't wait for it to be at full capacity. Next slide. So Bobby, I think we're going to go to the end of the presentation because I see that we're running a little bit over, and we're going to send all of this out in our newsletter to you. So if we could go ahead and skip to the very last slide, which has our what's on our mind for the future, and what are we looking ahead at? So there we go. Perfect. So we have a lot of priorities. There is so much we could do. As a matter of fact, our challenge is, how do we prioritize all the things we want to do? Because we have dozens of great ideas. But we know that we want to do things well, that we want to do things thoughtfully, that anything we start, we can continue doing. And most of all, that anything we do, we take St. Hubert's good care of the animals and of the people who come to us. So here are our biggest priorities for the coming year. We're going to do all the things that we have been doing, all the things I just talked about, but these are top of mind for 2024. So I talked a little bit about our daycare facilities. We're going to bolster community programs. And by that, what I mean is more pet food, hopefully a pet help center where we can answer people's questions that they may have if they're struggling with a pet, if something's challenging them, if they don't know how to care for them, if they're thinking about giving them up. We want to create not only phone lines, but also a virtual resource for people to be able to get that answer and to get resources so they don't have to think about surrender of their pets. Last year, we finally got back together and had our wine event with all of you, and we did something different. Instead of doing it in downtown Morristown, we did it at St. Hubert's, and we got feedback that people loved coming, and our staff had so much fun creating stations to show off their work and to talk about talk about what they're doing with our supporters. They got a chance to brag. They got a chance to hear from community members about what they're looking for. And it was just such a rich and meaningful way for us to get together. So we're looking at how can we have more in-person events. We have a beautiful campus, a beautiful home, outdoor space so we can get outside in the summer. So look to see more opportunities to engage with us. Many of you know that we merged a few years ago the Humane Rescue Alliance in Washington, D.C. with St. Hubert's Animal Welfare Center. And I'd say that the pandemic really interrupted some of our goals for that merger because the primary thing we wanted to do in addition to saving on some resources and making things a little more efficient, we wanted to bring our teams together because we have really talented teams in DC. We have a really talented team at St. Hubert's, and they do different things and they have different kinds of expertise and they can learn from each other. And so this year we're looking at how do we have more integration? How do we have more field trips of our staff so that they can essentially use one another as a learning lab and bring good ideas back and forth and really give you the best of all of it. So that'll be happening a lot more in the coming months. And then finally, if you have been to our Madison campus, you've seen a beautiful new sign come up for the Mosaic Animal Health Center. And this is a really exciting partnership. And I think actually it should be the focus of a community conversation where we have our partners at Mosaic here with us on a panel to talk about what we're going to do. But just in a nutshell, Mosaic is a really caring, really professional, really excellent veterinary business. And we started talking a couple of years ago about they wanted to grow. We wanted to make better use of our campus. We wanted to have more services for people in Madison and Morristown to take care of their pets. And so we came upon this partnership that is a win-win-win for Mosaic, for St. Hubert's, and for the community, where they took some unutilized and underutilized space in our building, invested their own resources into improving the building, and have turned it into a vet clinic, which is going to open very soon. And so the first phase of the Mosaic Animal Health Center will be primary care. The second phase will be specialty care. And what's really exciting is that more people and animals are going to be served. It's going to provide more options for people in the region to get vet care. Some people have no options at all right now, so it's give them an option. But it's going to be a really good, it's good for Mosaic because this is a beautiful space for them. It's wonderful for St. Hubert's because they've made our building more beautiful. They are paying us a long-term lease, which is going to bring in revenue for us to reinvest in some of our community programs. They're going to care for our shelter animals. So maybe if Bolt had come in next year, Bolt would have been cared for at Mosaic. And we know animals like Bolt are going to come in and we don't have to call around and find a place for them. We can just walk them down the hall and into the loving arms of our partners at Mosaic to treat them. And they're gonna give us free healthcare for some of our most challenging cases. And so it's just such a wonderful partnership. And we can't wait to see where it goes from here. So Bobby, I'm gonna now turn it over to you to see if anybody had any questions for me. And the rest of this is your time.
Well, Lisa, thank you. I have been feverishly trying to keep up with these incredibly thoughtful questions. And with our limited time, I'm just going to really get right to it. There are some sort of operational questions, but I actually want to start with this broader question for you is, as our CEO, what keeps you up at night? Like, what are you thinking about and what are the big things you're trying to solve?
I think that the biggest thing that keeps me up at night is that at the same time that more people want to have the companionship of a pet, which is something that I think our advocacy and our marketing and the conversations we've had has fomented. At the same time, more people want a pet, it's getting harder and harder to have one. And by that, I mean harder to find housing to have your pets, harder to pay for them, harder to even get a vet appointment because not only is vet care expensive, but they're just, there are fewer vets. A lot of vets left the profession during the pandemic. And there are only a few dozen veterinary schools in the country, and they only turn out a fixed number of veterinarians each year. And there is there's huge pressure on those new vets to pay back their student loans and to take jobs in production vet businesses where they have to really make money for their practice and make money for themselves. And so it's harder for us to find people that will take care of our shelter animals. But more importantly than that, it's harder for people to get a vet appointment. And we're seeing more and more evidence of people who right? They try to treat their pet. They do the best they can. They look up something online and it goes wrong. And then they feel terrible and they're in a worse place. So what I think about is, how do we keep more animals out of shelters and in homes? Um, what programs? We know we've got some great foundational programs, but what are we not thinking of that's going to make that difference? Uh, but I think at the same time, it's not just getting harder for pet owners to keep their pets, it's getting harder for our shelter colleagues to care for the pets in their shelters. And I mean, Bobby, you and I see so many of our partners who are just in so much pain because they're struggling to get through every day, and care for the pets in the shelter, and they don't want to have to euthanize them. And so how do we show up at St. Hubert's to help our partners? That's another thing that keeps me up at night. And so all of this means we have to raise more funds. It means we have to be more innovative. It means we have to do things in new ways and really stretch some of our muscles. So that's probably the biggest thing that keeps me up at night.
Absolutely, Lisa. I could not agree more. I think one of the reasons why I love working at an organization like this is because we're really looking at the pet relationship holistically, right? We are not an adoption agency, we're an animal
Right.
well-being agency. And so the fact that we're not just thinking about getting them out, but how do we make sure that they have happy lives and owners have happy and enriched lives after the process is one of my favorite parts of this. And I also think that just shows a great investment into diversity, equity, and inclusion because we are so focused on partnering with our community and making sure that we understand that people are trying to do right and trusting our community. It just makes me so excited. So going to the next question, there was a question about the cost of care bill that you mentioned in our policy work. So
Yeah.
someone asked, if someone is not able to afford to pay for the cost of care, or is not willing to pay for it, what ends up happening with those pets?
So those animals would be relinquished to the shelters.
Perfect. Next question that we have is actually back related to fosters. So Connie had asked, can you please share a link to where people can go to foster? So Connie, I will drop that into the chat right now. And there was another question actually related to the safe haven discussion. I know that a lot of our pets from safe haven do end up going to foster, but folks want to know why it's better for them to be in a foster home versus being at the shelter.
Um, well, I think it's always better when an animal can go from one home environment to another. Our our safe haven fosters um, really have the knowledge of what that animal has gone through and go the extra mile to make sure that they have a calm and safe and predictable and consistent environment, because in most of these homes where there's been violence, there's also chaos. And the animals feel that chaos. Their cortisol levels go up. They get stressed out. They live on the edge. They don't know what's going to happen next. And so our foster homes provide them with routines where they can just kind of exhale and be pets and know where their next meal is going to come from. Um, but I think another thing that is very important is that safety and security is really important to the people who come to us and are trying to escape a violent home. And we are always about building trust, but I think nowhere is it more important to build trust than with people whose trust has been violated by many of their other relationships and whose self-esteem is at a low because they've been degraded or hurt. And so we need to do so much to lean in and earn their trust and protect them. And if we sheltered them at the facility, people might think to come there to look for these animals. And we just want to take that right off the table. Our foster homes are anonymous. Nobody knows that they're there. So they're safe. It makes, it's usually women. So it's not always women, but it's usually women. It makes the domestic violence victim much more likely to turn the pet over to us, to know that they're going to be in a safe space where the abuser can't get them.
Yeah, and I will just share, some of my greatest experiences in my career is that moment of reunification when
Yeah.
someone has the opportunity to get their situation in order and they know that their pet is safe, and the moment that they can reconnect with their pet, it's what makes the work what it is. So
Yeah.
going to the next question, Lisa, I know that you mentioned a little bit about some of the cat transfers we're taking from New Jersey shelters, but folks would like to know, are there any other things that we're doing in collaboration with other shelters in New Jersey?
That's a great question. I feel like somebody was a fly on the wall yesterday. Um, so many years ago, there was a New Jersey coalition of animal organizations, the New Jersey Federation, where groups came together and they shared ideas and they supported one another. And um, sometimes they launched joint programs, or they problem solved, or they did advocacy together, or they created new innovations and new ways of doing things. And that kind of fell apart over the years and completely disintegrated during the pandemic. But just in the last month, the New Jersey Coalition has been reactivated. We've had 2 meetings now. We had a second meeting yesterday. Um, and there are 12 shelters that are participating. We expect more will join. And this is really a place for us to come together and understand, what are you dealing with? How could I help you? How can we be one more powerful voice if we all band together and advocate, as opposed to all of our individual voices? How do we do joint marketing campaigns to uplift the value of shelter animals in people's lives? So it's it's a group of thinking partners, um, who can be efficient, who can be there for one another, but most of all, who can be a combined and stronger voice for the animals and for animal welfare organizations throughout the state.
Great, thank you. Well, let's actually stay on that topic of partnerships. So, someone else also asked, do we have any new partnerships that we're excited about for 2024?
Um, so one new partnership that was new last year, but we're very excited about it, is with Mars, which is headquartered in Newark. So it's a home-based corporation. And I don't know if all of you know this, but Mars donates free pet food to feed all the shelter animals. So they they have a lot of micro businesses at Mars. One of them is pet food. And so our pets are eating for free thanks to our partners at Mars. And that means that we can take the money we would have invested in pet food and invest it in other things like community programs or transport. Um, the other thing people don't know is that Mars is actually one of the biggest veterinarians, employs the most veterinarians in the world through through their hospitals. And so we have a partnership with VCA where newly adopted shelter pets get a free vet visit, which not only lets people get their pet checked out shortly after adoption, but hopefully establishes a long-term relationship with a veterinarian so that they stay in that rhythm of regular wellness checks and they know they have someone to go through to if there's an emergency. And then we're really closely working with an amazing organization called People for Animals that provides safety net medical care throughout the state of New Jersey. They operate 3 clinics throughout the state, from north to south, and they're just an amazing, well-run medical operation that does high volume spay neuter, basic wellness care, and we're doing more and more with them. We're getting closer and closer to them. They're they're helping us with some of our needs. We take in animals who need to be adopted and help them find homes. And I think that partnership is going to grow and flourish. They're wonderful people.
Great, thank you. So speaking of locations, someone has a question regarding our Ledgewood location. So folks are just wondering what's going on there, or are any plans for the future there?
Yeah, so we have thought a lot about um, what to do there. We've had different iterations of, should it be an adoption center? Should it be a transport center? Um, and we're doing more and more adoption events there because it's so important that we get out into the community more and get people will always come to our headquarters in Madison to adopt, but we need to challenge ourselves to be in more places. So adopting out animals at Ledgewood gives them a new, fresh community where maybe people haven't seen them, makes it more convenient for people. And we really want to be a resource center in that community that answers people's questions, where they know there are friendly faces, and just make sure there's no gaps in service.
I love it. And the one thing I'll add to that, I think I am so grateful for the Ledgewood location, because as we were taking in more transports than we have, we saw a 40% increase over last year and trying to do more adoptions than ever. We also talked about how some of our partners were challenged and couldn't take as many animals. And so we ended up taking so many animals that there were times where we actually had to use Ledgewood as an overflow facility for our transports. And so it's just been a real blessing to have. And I can't wait to see what we do in the future. So next question, and we actually just have a couple left, which I'm glad, since we just have about 3 minutes left on the call, is about training, Lisa. So what do we do as far as training our staff, and are we investing into the training of our staff?
I mean, our staff gives so much to us, more than we could ever know, actually. And we want them to feel confident in their jobs. We want them to have career opportunities. Many of the people that work for us have been promoted from within to new jobs. And so we have a new learning and development department that is offering some specialized training for staff in collaboration with Maddie's University. Maddie's Fund is one of the biggest animal welfare funders in the country. They're a great partner of ours, and they have a whole university where shelter professionals like ours can increase their skills. But we also prioritize training to the point that every Thursday at 1 o'clock, we have an all hands training. And it takes a little bit different form every week. Sometimes it's hands-on. Sometimes it's actual animal handling training. Sometimes it's trying to solve a challenge together. Sometimes we're talking about community outreach, but each week our staff can count on us closing on a Thursday afternoon to dedicate focused time to them.
I love it. It is one of the highlights of my week as well, is being able to sit down with staff in both our campuses, New Jersey and DC, and really understanding what people want to see for their future. And so to that note, Lisa, the last question that we have is, what inspires you to keep moving forward?
So I remember being a little kid and going to the shelter that I would one day end up leading. And I was really fascinated by it. But my parents would never go back to it. They brought me once and they would never bring me again. And I always wanted to go back. I always wanted to go back to the shelter and see what was happening with the animals. I would ask them to go back. And at first, they would say, no, we're busy. And eventually it was clear to me they didn't want me to ask. And I internalized that something was wrong with animal shelters because of that message I was getting. And I think that animal shelters were depressing places because at that time, overpopulation was out of control. There were millions of animals being euthanized. And so amazing people who came before me and all of us really turned things around to make it a priority for community members to support their shelters and adopt from shelters. And so I feel like we've been a part of this movement of moving dogs from the doghouse into the bed and moving cats from being living in barns to kind of controlling the household. And so that's a huge success, right? The fact that we've just changed the environment where 90% of people will say pets are family now. 90% of pet owners will say they're family members, and they'll give the pet a meal before they'll give themselves a meal. They dress them up. They celebrate their birthdays. They celebrate holidays with them. And what excites me is how do we leverage that? How do we leverage this beautiful movement we've created where people celebrate animals and make them the center of their lives, where they're they're the most popular content on social media. I just think endless opportunities are in front of us to continue to elevate this bond if we're really smart about pinpointing our services so that people who are on the edge can keep their pets, hopefully come to a place where they're supporting us eventually. So to me, it's just building that grassroots movement of one health and of one that animals are a vital part of communities. I think the thing that will make me happy is if eventually urban planning schools include
Hmm.
animals in how they plan cities and communities. And I think that day is coming.
Yeah, harnessing the power of the human animal bond. And as you always teach me, Lisa, pets are a social lubricant and they bring people together that may never come together, probably like many of the folks on this call today, right? It's the pets
Yep.
and the people that bring us here. So again, thank you so much, Lisa, for offering me this opportunity. And thank you so much to everybody that's on the call. And so I will toss it to you, Lisa, to close us out.
Thank you. I think that last year was really challenging, but I'm super optimistic about the year ahead. We've got some really great foundational programs in place. We have an incredible team, and we want to hear from you. I think if there's anything we didn't get to, if you have ideas, put my email in the chat, Bobby, so that people can personally reach out to me. I really do want to hear from you because we get better when we are all a community thinking about these things together. So thank you. I hope you have a wonderful evening with your dog or your cat or your guinea pig or your human family or friends. And I look forward to the next time that we can get together, hopefully in person.